He believed he'd heard it all, until the 5-year-old son of Elon Musk posed a question at the dinner table that left everyone speechless. What would Donald Trump do next? This moment will both shatter your heart and open your eyes. The meal had concluded nearly an hour ago, yet Donald Trump lingered at the polished, elongated table in the East Room, his dessert untouched, a glass of water quietly sweating, forming a ring on the linen tablecloth. He wasn't sure why he stayed. Perhaps the conversation had drained him, or maybe it was something else, something small but piercing, that refused to let go. He kept replaying it in his mind. 10 people had been seated at the table, global leaders, tech billionaires, 2 retired generals, and a small, fidgeting boy who had arrived with Elon Musk. XAA-12, or simply X as everyone began calling him, was remarkably well behaved for a 5-year-old surrounded by adults engaged in circular discussions. Positioned next to Elon, he remained mostly silent, nibbling on dinner rolls and toying with a cloth napkin folded into a clumsy swan shape. The boy spoke only once, and that single moment consumed Trump's thoughts. It happened during a heated debate. Elon was detailing a new orbital relay system to enhance satellite communication speed, while a prime minister countered with cybersecurity concerns. Words piled on, layered with logic, jargon, and projections. Then, without warning, the child's voice cut through. What happens when people die? The room stilled, not dramatically, not awkwardly, but in a quiet pause. Every adult turned to the boy. Then they did what adults often do, they smiled politely, shifted in their seats, and resumed the conversation as if the question hadn't been asked. Trump glanced down the table at the child, now staring at his napkin swan, and felt a tug, not from the question itself, but from the silence that followed. Now, alone in the quiet White House dining room, Trump let out a long breath. He rose slowly, his bones creaking from age and exhaustion, and stepped into the hallway. An aide passed by, muttering about a call from South Dakota. Trump waved him off. Not now. He needed air. He navigated the corridors with the familiarity of someone who had lived in a place both revered and feared, passing portraits, chandeliers, and windows that had witnessed centuries. Almost without thinking, he pushed open the glass doors to the south garden. The night air was cooler than he'd expected, autumn was settling in, gentle but firm. He walked slowly along the path to an old bench beneath a sycamore tree. There, he saw him, a small figure curled up alone. Trump stopped. It was X, still in his tiny dinner jacket, still clutching the same napkin, now crumpled and limp. The boy was silent, his eyes red, staring at the dark grass as if it held answers. Trump approached carefully. Couldn't sleep, he asked softly. X looked up, startled, then shrugged. I snuck out. Trump gave a gentle smile. I do that sometimes too. He sat at the far end of the bench, keeping his distance. X didn't look at him, gripping the napkin like a blanket. You asked a question at dinner, Trump said after a moment. The boy nodded, eyes still lowered. And no one answered. Another nod. I'm sorry, Trump said. I think you caught us all off guard. X finally met his gaze. Grown-ups don't like questions like that. Trump tilted his head. What do you mean? About death. And other things. They always go quiet, like I did something wrong. Trump exhaled slowly. You didn't do anything wrong. Then why do they look at me like that? Trump searched for an answer, an honest one that wouldn't frighten the child. Grown-ups are scared of questions, he said carefully. They don't always know how to answer. X frowned. But they're grown-ups. Aren't they supposed to know? Trump smiled, a sad smile. We like to think we do. But we're just older, not always wiser. The boy kicked his legs lightly. I asked my dad once. He said people go back to the stars. But he said it fast, like he wanted to say something else. Trump nodded slowly. Maybe he didn't know how to say what he really felt. Do you know what happens when people die? Trump looked out at the garden. Moonlight softly touching everything. I've lost people I loved, some suddenly, some slowly. I stood by their beds, said goodbye when I wasn't ready. And you know what I learned? X leaned in slightly. I don't know what happens next, Trump said. But I think something does, something good. The boy was quiet for a moment, then whispered, what if they forget me? Trump turned to him. Who? The people who died. What if they forget I love them? Trump swallowed hard. I don't think love works that way, he said. I think when we love someone, really love them, it stays, even when they're gone, even if I forget their voices, even then. X was silent for a long time, then whispered, I don't want to grow up if it means I forget things. Trump felt something crack inside him. He looked at this boy, not just Elon Musk's son, but a child with wonder and sadness too deep for 5 years of life. And he remembered being that small, that scared, that curious. He recalled asking his own mother once, what happens when we disappear? She'd answered, we don't disappear, we go back to who made us. He hadn't thought of that in decades. Want to know what I think happens? Trump asked. X nodded. Trump pointed upward. You know stars die too, right? They explode. Yeah, X replied. But do you know what happens after they explode? X shook his head. They leave light behind. It keeps traveling, even after the star is gone, moving through the darkness. And sometimes, years later, someone sees it and says, look how bright it is. The boy blinked. People are like that too, Trump said. When someone dies, the love they gave keeps going, like light. X looked at the sky, then back at Trump. Do you really believe that? Trump hesitated. I think I do now. X gave a faint smile. The wind rustled the trees. Trump stood slowly. Let's go. Let's get you back inside before the Secret Service thinks I've misplaced a world leader's child, Trump chuckled. X giggled softly. Trump extended his hand, and X took it. They walked back through the garden, the gentle crunch of leaves beneath their feet. The silence between them was no longer awkward but felt complete. Not every question needed an answer, sometimes, asking together was enough. The next morning, Donald Trump woke earlier than usual. The sun had just begun to rise, casting a faint amber glow through the tall windows of the residence. The room was still, save for the quiet hum of the city stirring below. He'd always been a light sleeper, but today, it wasn't noise that roused him, it was the boy's voice. Do you really believe that? Trump sat up slowly, the sheet slipping down his arms. He rubbed his face with both hands and sat motionless for a while, letting the memories wash over him. X's words, the way he'd asked about death, the way his tiny fingers clutched the napkin like a lifeline to something safe, sat heavy in Trump's chest, a stone that wouldn't budge. He walked to the window and gazed at the south lawn. It was calm, pristine, quiet. Everything outside looked under control, inside him, not so much. He wasn't a man who welcomed discomfort. His instincts were sharp, his habits sharper. When something unsettled him, he'd usually outtalk it or outpace it. But this wasn't something he could outrun, not with meetings, cameras, or applause. He dressed slowly, unusually, without the TV on, no tie, no cufflinks, just a simple navy suit and a pale blue shirt, unbuttoned at the collar. Downstairs in his study, coffee awaited him, as did the silence. He sat in a leather chair by the window, sipping slowly, the warmth of the mug doing little to ease the chill beneath his skin. I don't want to grow up if it means I forget things. He didn't know why that line hurt more than the others. Perhaps because, deep down, he remembered saying something similar as a young boy, or maybe he'd only felt it, never daring to voice it. He reached for the phone, considered calling Elon, then set it down. What would he even say? Your son asked about death. He was scared. And he's wondering why you didn't answer. No, that wasn't a conversation to start on a Thursday morning. Instead, he opened a drawer beside his desk. Inside were stacks of letters, mostly unopened, notes from supporters, children's drawings, a book from a pastor, a handwritten postcard from a veteran's widow. He picked one at random, from a woman in Tennessee, written in neat cursive. "Mr. President, please don't forget us little people. We pray for you every night. I hope you know God is still listening. Sometimes I wonder if anyone in Washington still believes that." He read it twice, then put it back. The boy's question had struck him, yes, but it wasn't just about death, it was about the silence. The silence adults wrap around themselves, thinking it shields them from vulnerability, believing honesty makes them weak. Yet wasn't it the child who showed the greatest strength? He'd asked the question no one else at that table dared to voice, at least not aloud. Trump leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. He saw the boy again, sitting under the sycamore, moonlight making his small face almost glow. He remembered how the boy had clung to his words, not because they were brilliant, but because they were spoken gently, truthfully. "Even if I forget their voices," Trump thought of his older brother, Fred, who died decades ago, a slow, sad descent into alcohol and regret, a warning sign Trump had ignored until it was too late. He'd grieved in his own way but hadn't truly felt it in years. Now, suddenly, he did. He recalled Fred's voice and how long it had been since he'd let himself truly hear it. A soft knock at the door, an aide. "Sir, Mr. Musk is on the premises. He's in the Roosevelt room, preparing for the energy roundtable." Trump nodded. "Bring him here when he's done." "Just him?" The aide blinked. "Yes, sir." Trump stood and returned to the window, looking out at the lawn, the reporters setting up beyond the gates, the agents standing still as statues. Somewhere, he hoped, the boy was playing, asking more questions. An hour later, Elon Musk entered the study. He looked distracted, as always, phone in hand, half-formed thoughts on his face. But he paused when he saw Trump sitting not at his desk but by the window. "You wanted to see me." Trump gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit." Elon sat, intrigued. "Something happened last night," Trump began. Elon raised an eyebrow. "Your son asked a question at dinner." Elon nodded slowly. "About death." "You heard him." "Of course I did. I just didn't know how to answer." Trump studied him. "So you said nothing." Elon looked uncomfortable, a rare sight. "What do you say to a 5-year-old who asks what happens when we die?" "He wouldn't understand." Trump leaned forward. "He understood that you didn't answer." Elon blinked. "He told me," Trump continued, "that people look at him funny when he asks hard questions, that grown-ups go quiet." Elon shifted in his seat. "He's always been curious." "It's not curiosity. It's loneliness." Silence. Trump exhaled slowly. "Look, I'm not here to lecture you. I've made more mistakes with my kids than I can count. I drowned their silence with my voice. But last night, I saw a boy trying to make sense of something he shouldn't have to face alone. And no one answered him." Elon looked genuinely struck, a flicker of something in his usually sharp, distracted eyes. "What did you say to him?" Trump stared out the window. "I told him love is like light, it keeps traveling, even after we're gone." Elon looked at his hands. Trump added, "He listened. And I listened back. And I think that's what he really wanted, not answers, just someone who wasn't afraid to sit in the unknown." The room fell quiet. Trump glanced at Elon. "We're raising sons in a world we barely understand. They don't need our certainty, they need us to be present." Elon nodded slowly, quietly. Trump stood. "He's a good kid. Don't let the noise drown him out." Elon rose too. "I won't." Trump nodded once, then turned back to the window. Elon left without another word. Donald Trump stood watching the morning pass, thinking of all the children asking big questions and all the adults forgetting that not knowing is sometimes the most honest answer of all. That evening, the White House was quieter than usual, no grand speeches, no press briefings. Just the sound of autumn wind tapping gently at the windows and the muted footsteps of staff moving through marble halls. Donald Trump sat alone in a small library, a rarely used room filled with antique volumes he'd never bothered to read. A fire crackled softly. He wasn't reading. He sat in reflection. For most of the day, the memory of X's question had circled his mind like a hawk over still water. But now, another thought stirred beneath it, creeping in uninvited. When was the last time I asked Barron a real question? Not a casual one, not a polite one, but a true one. He had no answer, and that troubled him more than he cared to admit. Slowly, he rose, his bones stiff from sitting too long, and made his way upstairs. At night, the residence felt different, less formal, more like a space where truth could exist without the glare of press releases. He paused outside Barron's room. The door was slightly ajar, a soft glow spilling into the hallway. He knocked gently. No response. He pushed the door open. Barron sat at his desk, headphones on, staring at a tablet screen. He looked taller than Trump remembered, more a young man than a boy, his posture slouched but focused. The room was tidy, too tidy, as if silence had taken up permanent residence. Trump cleared his throat. Barron looked up, startled, and removed his headphones. "Hey," he said, a bit wary. "Hey," Trump replied, stepping inside. "Didn't mean to sneak up on you." Barron shrugged. "It's fine." Trump glanced around. "You're always here." "I like it here. It's quiet." Trump nodded, then walked over and sat on the edge of the bed. Barron swiveled in his chair, watching him. "I met someone yesterday," Trump said. "Elon's son." Barron raised an eyebrow. "X?" "Yeah. He's 5. Asked a question about death at dinner." Barron blinked. "Wow." Trump nodded. No one answered him. Barron leaned back slightly in his chair. "What did you do?" "I found him later, sat with him, told him what I believe, or what I think I believe." Barron stayed silent. Trump took a deep breath. "It made me realize something. I don't know if I've ever talked to you about things like that." Barron shrugged. "We don't really talk like that." Trump winced. "No, we don't." They sat in an awkward silence. Then Trump asked carefully, "Have you ever thought about things like that?" Barron looked away. "Sometimes." "What do you believe?" Barron hesitated. "I think people are scared of being forgotten. That's the worst part, not dying, just disappearing, and no one remembering who you were." Trump swallowed hard. "I think I felt that when my brother died," he said quietly. "Fred. He was funny, kind. He'd bring me candy after school. When he was gone, I couldn't recall his laugh for years. I buried it, I guess. I was scared of the pain." Barron studied him. "I didn't know that." "I never told you," Trump admitted. They fell silent again. Then Barron asked, "Are you ever scared?" Trump gave a faint smile. "Every day." "Of what?" Trump looked out the window. "Of letting people down, wasting time, talking so much I forget to hear what matters, missing the important things because I thought the world needed to be right instead of real." Barron nodded slowly. "That's a lot." "It is," Trump agreed. They sat for a few more minutes, the sounds of the house faint and distant. Then Barron said, "I used to have a question, but I stopped asking it." Trump looked at him. "Why?" "Because I didn't think anyone would want to answer." Trump leaned forward. "Try me." Barron took a breath. "What if I grow up and I'm nothing like you? What if I don't want to give speeches or stand in front of cameras?" What if I want a quiet life and just disappear from all of this? Trump's chest tightened. He stood, walked over, and placed a hand on his son's shoulder. Then I'll find you, he said softly. Wherever you go, I'll find you, and I'll listen to anything you want to say. Barron looked up, his eyes wet. Promise? Trump nodded. I promise. They stayed like that for a long time, father and son, not trying to fix anything, just being present in the unspoken space between their truths. Later that evening, Trump wrote a brief note and placed it in the top drawer of his desk. Sometimes the question matters more than the answer. And the person brave enough to ask it is braver than the one who pretends to know. The next day, after his talk with Barron, Donald Trump did something he hadn't done in decades. He took the morning off, no cameras, no meetings, no press releases, just a car waiting outside the West Wing. He didn't tell anyone where he was going, not even his aides. He simply said, "I'll be back by lunch," and slid into the back seat of a black SUV, leaving behind a stack of unsigned papers and unanswered calls. As the car pulled away, he gave the driver an address he hadn't spoken aloud in years, Queens, the neighborhood of his childhood. The streets were different now, diners gone, storefronts changed, sidewalks cleaner but quieter. Yet the memory of them lived in the bones of the place, and Trump felt it rising the deeper they drove into the area. They stopped in front of a small church with white siding, its paint peeling. Short steps led to red doors. He hadn't been there since his mother's funeral and didn't even know if it was still open. But he stepped out, hands in his coat pockets, and approached the doors. To his surprise, they opened with a quiet creak. The sanctuary inside was empty, dust hanging like fog in the slanted light from the windows. The wooden pews creaked under his weight as he sat in the back row. He hadn't come to pray, not exactly. But he needed to be in a place that remembered him. He closed his eyes. Fred, his mother. This concludes our narrative journey. I trust you found this gripping saga of intrigue, cutting-edge innovation, and astonishing discoveries captivating. From where are you tuning in today? I'm curious to learn which corner of the globe this tale has touched. If this escapade held your interest, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for a steady stream of compelling, mind-expanding stories just like this one. Fresh material is posted frequently, ensuring you're always in the loop for the newest spellbinding adventures. Be sure to pass this video along to your loved ones and friends. It's a great way to share positivity and insight while expanding our circle of story enthusiasts. Your encouragement is invaluable. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to welcoming you back for the next tale.